not a YouTuber, just like making videos. And we are the new better men. And I'm talking about dudes like me, your Fero Impact, Big JXX, New Possibilities, I Declare War. I'm like, we're the better men right now. We don't do a whole lot of shaming tactics, and a lot of the things we say in videos can be backed by facts, actual facts. Now I know ultimately YouTube ain't a place for black thought, for a back gathering, and you know YouTube is a place where people play video games and get 2 million views. But I was watching a Queezy's latest video where he said the Negro race is the weakest link, and he goes into scandal. He starts off talking about scandal and all the black women. I'm like, we got to get off the scandal. I'm like, we were playing it around. I'm like, we're playing it out. I'm like, Hollywood never had our best interests at heart, and then we're gonna use Hollywood as a catalyst, as this, okay, it's, you see this is popular, it's all over for us and so forth. And like, instead of worrying about Kerry Washington, and then why don't we ever talk about Angela Bassett and how Angela Bassett turned down that role in Monsters Ball. And they gave the Halle Berry got it, but Halle Berry's mixed. Now I only talk about positive black women. I'm like, what about Winnie Mandela? What about the Prime Minister of Liberia is a black female? What's her name? Ellen Relief or something. I put her picture up there. Strong black women. We look at these examples and Hollywood for all the places, and they say, oh, here we go, and, you know, it's all downhill. The thing is, there's just too many black people complaining about other black people, and they complain about how other black people complain about the white man. The thing is with the Japanese get things done. They don't just sit around and just point the finger. They just chop. Get it done with. Now, Painless Risen made a comment on the video, and it was one of his most asinine comments. The thing is with these guys, the stuff they say can't be backed on a academic or scholarly level. It's a whole lot of hearsay and falling into the realm of propaganda. Now, Painless said something about black man's the original man. He's underdeveloped. Like he's not. Like he's saying that if the black man is original, is the first man, then he's not as developed mentally as other men and so forth. Now of course this can't be backed on a scholarly level, but who cares? Who cares about education and things of that? And the thing is, they don't want it with me because then I'll break out the books. But there is no higher evolution of men than the black man. I'm like, try to find, and these are facts. As even Charles Darwin said, there's not enough differences in human beings to classify them as separate species. I'm not even a fan of Charles Darwin, but the stuff they say, I'm like, even if we reject the books, because I know these guys, and I know Painless don't read books because he's cross-eyed. The only books he probably likes are like those pop-out books. If he actually read something, he can't because his way his eyes are. It's lines and lines of text. You know what I'm saying? Would be too hard for him to comprehend. But even if we go by stats, because they'll turn around and well, look at the stats. I'm like, yeah, look at the stats. Let's look at the poverty rate. 22% of black people live beneath the poverty line. You may say, well, compared to our ratio, that's a lot, but still, look at what the census considered to be black. Mixed people are considered black. People from the Caribbean and Africa will fall under the black category and so forth. Because I've seen the category. They got white, non-Hispanic, Hispanic, black, Asian, Native American, and sometimes Polynesian. But there really isn't a category for mixed people. But we take up like 14% of government handouts, you know what I'm saying, of their budget, food stamps and so forth. White people represent 49% of the American population living up beneath the poverty rate, and they get 69% of the benefits, the handouts and so forth. I'm like, these are facts. You can look it up for yourself. Now you can say that, oh well, ratio wise and so forth. I'm like, man, blacks have been disfranchised, economically disfranchised for 400 years. And if you want to get on black people for getting their chops together and so forth, then why don't you get on Native Americans? I'm like, Native Americans, they tapped out. Well, I don't want to say that, but they wanted to stand by their culture to a point where like, we'll just sit here on reservations and get casinos. No other nation of people in world history, in the world, can live up to the standards of white people when white people are the dominant occupiers and so forth. The Jews in Israel, the Palestinians people, and the Arabics they're not living as good as the Jews. They got the power. I'm like, the Aboriginals aren't living as good as white people in Australia. The Brazilians, the black Brazilians or the mixed Brazilians. I'm like, the white Brazilians, just the straight Portuguese blood, they still run and control that country. I'm like, the white people, still got the better end of the deal. They're still eating high off the hog in those countries. So yeah, when whites come in and dominate, I'm like and Hawaii, the indigenous people in Hawaii aren't living as good as whites. They don't own the hotels and the airports like white people. So it's almost like you're kicking black people for, you know what I'm saying, the same way these other people aren't doing, you know what I'm saying, they're not faring so well either. Hence, but I think that the black people we've endured, and still, we were just released from our shackles yesterday. Bear in mind, the lifespan of a human being is only just a grain of sand. I'm like, it's nothing. So we look at it as, I'm like, when did we get civil rights and so forth? I'm like, we just got this stuff yesterday, and it's like, I'm like, who knows where blacks will be at 100 and 150 years? And still this whole thing about blacks being the weakest, whatever. When I see videos about white genocide, white people are fearful of their culture being destroyed, all because they're opening their borders and giving people a fair shake. Bear in mind, nobody's running around just exterminating white people or doing or tampering with their water supply. No, there's no campaign, there's no conspiracy to physically wipe out white people with machine guns or biological weapons and so forth, but they're just fearful. To me, this is a pure sign of weakness when you're just simply afraid, when all the other people they're going by your laws and rules. I'm like, they're want a piece of the American dream and pie that you promised the whole world. I'm like, this country was was taken from brown-skinned people, and now there were. So that to me is a sign of weakness. So seeing white people's rhetoric and their paranoia, I'm like, I will tell you this right now: the race situation is going to get worse. It's not going to get better. You know what I'm saying? By a long shot. Some of the progress is an illusion. And this doesn't mean, even if white people do consider us equals and they look at us as, okay, I consider we're equals, but still, I don't want to be around you. You know what I'm saying? I still want my neighborhoods for myself. Hence, I don't think I'm superior to you. I just, want to be amongst my own. So hence, this is going to still cause racial friction. Now, some people may say, well, black people, we have our own and whatever. Why can't white people have their own? Because I know that's how, Painless would say it. But, white people have their hands all in our community. They got their white cops. Black people, when we get bussed out to their penitentiaries out there in nowhere, Plainfield, Indiana, or upstate New York, or whatever penitentiary we go to, that economically, that's going to benefit that small town. These black inmates are going to benefit some small hucklebuck town where there's no jobs. The only jobs there is working at that jail, and then counting those prisoners as part of their town's population, so that they can get more tax money from the government and so forth. So it helps. That's why a lot of the I'm not talking about the jails, but the penitentiary are in these, as I said, hunky-dory towns where there ain't really any jobs, And also, going into the crime stats, there's not enough cells to lock up every black man in America. Only about 10% of blacks are repeat offenders and go back and forth in jail. You know what I'm saying? We only have enough facilities to hold approximately 2 million people in custody. That's why I said 2 million people in custody. Then there's another portion that's on probation. There's another portion that's on their way to jail. So roughly 10% of our population is jail bound and so forth. But hence, only about 4% of our population are actually incarcerated right now. So hence, the majority of black people are living the straight and narrow. The majority of black people are not living below this poverty line, and the majority of black people are not jailbirds. Hence, even in Malcolm X's book, he even stated that it's tough for a lot of these black boys growing up in the urban jungle or whatever. But he still said that only a minority of these people will go the path that he went. Only a minority of black dudes growing up in the ghetto or whatever are just going to be long-term hustlers and pimps. But they're going to represent us whole, because once again, we got Hollywood. We got Hollywood in the entertainment industry that works against us, and they're going to, they're going to look at these people as the status quo and so forth. And the thing is, with black people, we don't fit into the mold of American society. Now, point blank, we never did. We weren't the ideal American. We weren't Norman Rockwell's America. So we were always looked at like these stepchildren and treated like stepchildren. And then stepchildren, sometimes act out and act bad, so forth. But still, we gotta look at things realistically and logically. But the thing is, the black shamers are gonna still rub our face in the mud and this and that, and say what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing. And these people aren't doing it for themselves. And you have to give it time. And we need money. I'm like, you need resources. I'm like, every nation has poor people, and poor people are just always going to be looked down upon. But when I look at the things that are going on in Mexico and in Brazil and India, I'm like, these people have it far worse, and their level of crime. surpass the level that they kill themselves. Surpasses by a long shot. Now I could just rag on Mexicans and say, hey, why can't Mexicans get their shit together? Why can't Mexicans, do this? Why do they have to come over here and live illegal and so forth? But I feel that part of this was theirs to begin with. But still, even with these black dudes, these bootlickers, I'm like, sometimes, okay, let's abandon race. Let's not talk about race. And we do understand that powerful people are going to take advantage of the poor and disfranchised. And that's how it is. That's why in Europe you had all these riots recently. Them trying to overthrow the banks and so forth. So we have an agreement that there's corruptions on all levels. But the black shamers are just going to simply just talk about black people. It's your own fault. Like somehow this corruption is in no way has breached us and so forth. So hence, we can just talk about how the powers that be, are just screwing over the American people. But hence, in America, we got this thing called, it's hard to overlook race, especially when it comes to certain things such as Trayvon Martin. When you have poor white people who will support Judge Zimmerman. Matter of fact, you have poor white people that say, well, support the Republican Party. You have white people that was normally voting Democrat vote Republican because of Barack Obama's in office, and so forth. And his policies are actually going to help them. But but the thing is, it's hard to overlook. It's hard to overlook these black degenerates and what these black dudes, because it's like they're a conversation piece. It's easy to sit up there and say, oh, the black man this, black people that, black people this, look at this black person over here. News story of some black woman doing something irrational and shameful. And I think about black people like my parents. My parents would be considered boring old beanies. I'm like, my mom just sits there and read books. My dad goes fishing. They live out there in the sticks. But talking about them is boring. They're not interesting. For me if I were to sit up there and make videos about people of that ilk, nobody would care. People want to hear dudes going on black people because black people are a good scapegoat. Because as I said before, this society on all levels it doesn't look good. Even on an environmental level, on an economic level, things are just they're not looking bright. The future does not look bright unless there's a change. But it's very easy to blame the people lowest on the totem pole. It's very easy to shame people who virtually have no power. This has been done throughout human history, and it accomplishes absolutely nothing. Alright, thanks for watching. It's Sally Forth.